All right, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for today. We're going to talk about migrating from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 and 9 and talk about what you need to know about your migration. We're going to try to keep this, out of the weeds. I'm not going to get too technical on you. I really just want to give you the tools that you need for your business, your team, your organization to plan out your migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. And take advantage of the new features in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. So jumping right into it, we'll go through really four main sections in the webinar. I'll give an introduction. We'll talk a little bit about digital Polygon. We'll talk about migrating Drupal 7 and why we say migrate instead of upgrade. We'll talk about some business considerations that you should take into account for your migration, or at least think about when you're planning for it. And then we'll talk through some of the new features in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. And I'm really using these synonymously because there really isn't much difference from the latest version of Drupal 8 to the first version of Drupal 9. That upgrade really just got rid of the deprecations. So the functionality set is pretty much exactly the same. So for those that don't know us, we are an agency that is primarily focused on enterprise Drupal. We do a lot of enterprise migrations. We've been bailing out problematic builds for the better part of a decade here in our various jobs. The team is made up primarily of Drupal architects and developers, and we specialize in architecture and DevOps. So we've been through this multiple times over the last 5 or 6 years, and very excited to be talking to everyone here today. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about migrating from Drupal 7. Again, the goal of this presentation is to not teach you how to do your migration. I'll walk you through a demo of, here's what you do, because it really is not that simple. What I want to be able to do is help you untangle your thoughts and really come to a clear path forward for you and your organization or your Drupal 7 upgrade / migration. So let's start out with the basics. Important dates for you to understand. Drupal end of life for Drupal 7 got moved from November 2021 to November 2022. Due to the pandemic, the community extended support for Drupal 7. This is great news for anyone on Drupal 7. Possibly. Maybe it's bad news for your organization if that means they're not going to pull the trigger and you severely need a site refresh. But either way, it gives some breathing room there. Drupal 8, you'll notice, still is end of life on November 2021. And this is really because the underlying framework and Symfony, which Drupal 8 is built on, and we'll talk about here in a second, is deprecated as of November 2021. And it's not getting security updates either. And it's really forcing the end of life there. And then, if you didn't know, Drupal 9 was released in June, and it is stable for use. So let's talk about a little bit about the massive core architecture shifts from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. Drupal 7 was primarily built on PHP, just pure vanilla PHP. Really customized. Wasn't using really a framework, and it was using the PHP template system to do its theming layer. In order to attract more talent and make it more appealing to PHP developers, the core team decided that they would standardize on frameworks. So we've standardized on Symfony, and we've standardized on Twig for the front end. Symfony is a well-known PHP framework. It's used for a lot of other applications. And Twig is also a very popular front-end theming engine. But this means that the upgrade process for core and for modules was not easy because of these core paradigm shifts. I took this straight from Drupal.org. And, they're very upfront about it in their documentation that unlike previous versions, the Drupal 8 upgrade process does not upgrade the source site in place. It requires you to spin up a second website that's in Drupal 8 and do a migration from 7 to 8 in order to upgrade your site. The migration tools that are there are great, but they really only cover core functionality. And we'll get into that in a minute. So the good news, again, the migrate modules, they give you a starting point. And even if you're not using, if they don't meet all your needs, they'll give you a place to start. Contrib is pretty much fully ready for Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. You know, I say 8 in this, but you can basically interchange 8 and 9 anytime you want through this presentation. And then future upgrades, Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 and Drupal 9 to Drupal 10, when it comes out, will be straightforward. There's not going to be a massive architecture shift. And as long as you're keeping up with your technical debt and your code, it will be a relatively smooth process. Now let's talk about some challenges that you might have. So migrating to Drupal 8 requires you to rewrite pretty much all of your custom code and the majority of your theme. So we'll talk about the theme layer first. The theme layer, in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 is using Twig. The syntax for your templates is completely different. The markup for what Drupal outputs is completely different. So that means that the classes that you're targeting in your old CSS aren't going to work in Drupal 8 when you migrate up to Drupal 8 without some sort of customization. So, you know, it's going to take a time investment to handle that. And, you know, the core behaviors were modified. So, you know, if you have a hefty theme file in Drupal 7, it's more likely than not that a majority of that will have to be rewritten in Drupal 8. Same thing goes for custom modules. There's no real automation for this. There's tools to help you identify what needs to change and what functions got deprecated and removed and what the new ones you should use are. So it can help you plan this, but you know, if you had a heavily customized site, you know, this is something you have to take into account. And then contrib support. It is possible that modules you're using in Drupal 7 do not exist in Drupal 8. And that's something that, you know, is going to be there for every version of people not supporting them or something new coming along that overtakes it. And more importantly, even if the contrib was upgraded, there's not too many that support the migration paths out of the box. So your results will vary based on what modules you're using. So again, it's really important to plan this migration and make sure that you're thinking about these things when you move forward. So taking a deeper look at the migration module and the core migration tools and the support here, it really is built out to support core entity definitions. So your content types, your fields, your structures. And in case it wasn't clear, the migration path does give you the migration for config. And when we say config, we mean it will migrate the structure of your nodes, your content types and your fields up, as long as you're not using any contrib that's not supported, which if you're running an enterprise website is highly unlikely. So, you know, your results will vary greatly here. You know, it does have sources for content in Drupal 7 in the migrate module. So it'll be a little bit easier for you to set this up, even if you have to do it somewhat custom. But again, it handles the base use cases. And then user roles can be upgraded, you know, pending the contrib space. So if you're using profile 2, things like that to enhance your user experience and your roles, maybe workbench access type permissions, you know, your results are going to vary greatly on what can be upgraded here. What it does not support for sure, your theme, like we mentioned before. Most contributed configurations, including the most popular one on Drupal.org, which is views. You know, views cannot be upgraded automatically. You have to rebuild these by hand. And considering views is one of the most used pieces of your website, that could take a little while. The good news is that the config hasn't changed too much and it got integrated to core. So, you know, there's great support there. And then custom modules. Again, your results are vary based on how complex your code base is. Jumping into the Migrate module a bit deeper, there's a Drupal UI for Migrate inside of Core. And this is a tool that you can use for planning your upgrade. If you install a fresh version of Drupal 8 and you hook it up to your Drupal 7 database with this tool, it will run a scan and tell you which contrib modules have a Drupal 8 version, which contrib modules don't. It'll give you a breakdown of how long it'll take to migrate some of these things, broken into categories, the steps required to do your upgrade. It'll give you effort estimates for modules, really, really rough timelines. But it gives you some sort of idea to see how complex this is going to be. And then again for views as well, depending on how complex it is. So this is a great place to start if you haven't even started thinking about it. And it's not a huge lift to get this done for your website. And if you need someone to help, feel free to reach out. We are happy to help you with it. So just to recap, there is no clean upgrade path from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 unless you're running a completely vanilla website. It just really doesn't exist. There's going to be manual work no matter what. It's going to cost you time, which is, equals money. And the next part of this presentation, I really want to talk to you guys about what that means for your business and what other considerations you should take into account if you're planning on upgrading. Because if you're already putting the effort in and your website is still on Drupal 7, it's probably pretty outdated. And there's probably benefits you can achieve for your business and your growth as you move forward. So with that, let's talk about business considerations and kind of talk about what else you should be thinking about when doing this. So I want to start with a quote. So I think this is more prevalent in 2020 than it ever has been before. But your website is the center of your digital ecosystem. Just like a brick and mortar location, the experience matters. And when a customer enters, just as much as the perception they have of you before they walk through your door. Your website is really a lot of times the first touch point. People interact with your brand and your organization. And if your website is not putting off the right messaging and the right feel for your customers, then you're probably missing out before they even get started. So with that in mind, I want you guys to think about the website refresh versus a lift and shift of your website. With the extended timeline, it gives you some more time to plan, but the time will go quickly just like it did the first time around. So getting ready for your migration is important. Some questions to ask yourself. If you need a website redesign, right? Do you need to revise your content strategy in your IA? Is your website dated or no longer serving your target audience? And are you looking for more flexibility in your website content creation? Is your Drupal 7 site working for you well? Or are there things that you'd like to improve when you go to Drupal 8? And we'll take a look here shortly at some of the new enhanced content authoring tools in Drupal 8 that might be able to help you here. For an as-is migration, really the only people that should be doing this are people that your website was redesigned recently, or it still does what you need it to do from a customer perspective. If it's relatively simple, you can take advantage of some of these tools to make it a bit easier. And if you're really just using core functionality, this will be an easier approach. And just to follow up on that, some food for thought. If you really are running a simple site, when you're thinking about this upgrade, thinking about if Drupal is the right CMS choice for your use case. It's possible there's other CMSs like WordPress that could help you get more bang for your buck. And if not, if Drupal is the right choice, depending on the amount of content you have, is a manual migration more cost effective than an automated migration here? For a complex site, what problems do you have with your current CMS? What can be improved inside of Drupal 8 and 9? And what benefits can you get from taking advantage of the new modules and the new framework that exists there that you don't have the ability to in Drupal 7? And these are things that are really important to take into consideration when you're planning so that you don't kind of box yourself in. So with that, let's take a look at some of these features and some of the power that Drupal 8 has that you're missing out on Drupal 7 right now. So I'm going to start with mainly the core features here. Core had initiatives to really focus heavily on the content authoring experience. Layout Builder came out in Drupal 8.5, 8.6 timeframe. It's a flexible page builder tool. We'll take a look at it in a minute here. That is very similar to panels, but much easier to use for a normal content editor. And it's much more integrated into your content. It works with workflow. It works with revisioning. A lot of the issues in Drupal 7 have been solved in the rewrite here. The second module that I'm really excited about here is Workspaces. And Workspaces gives you a predefined area to manage a group of pages. So let's say you have a section of your website that you want to go in and edit and then publish all at once. It gives you a staging area for that set of content that can be edited and then deployed all at one time. Media, this was contrib up until Drupal 8.5, I believe. In Drupal 7, it was definitely contrib. This was finally got integrated into core. So there's a much stronger integration for your media files and management of files and images, which is great. And then finally, content moderation. This is your workbench moderation in Drupal 7. And again, there's a lot more support for this across the board. So it's not just for nodes anymore. You can use this for any entity type that you create on your site, which is great. From the technical side, for anyone that's working enterprise, configuration management is huge. It's a huge addition that got added into core. And it basically allows you to do what features did in Drupal 7, but better. It allows you to export your site configuration and then deploy it between your environments in a repeatable fashion, which I'm really excited about. It's not all the way there in core, so there is contrib support for it and several contrib modules to help you get through some edge cases, but it's a great pattern that they added there. And then RESTful web services. This is a great tool as well for if you're talking about going headless, if you need to integrate with other applications, the RESTful web services are there to support that. And as we get through into Drupal 9, there's going to be more of a push to kind of decouple this and allow integrations with more of the headless applications more easily, kind of out of the box. So let's take a look at Layout Builder. So this was taken from Drupal.org, but it's a good example of the flexibility that you have within this. So this is a node page, and on this node page, you have the ability to add sections. Inside of each section, you can add layouts. Inside of each layout, you can add blocks and content. And you can really quickly and easily modify and control the structure of your page here. In Drupal 8.7, 8.8, this was fixed, so it works with revisioning. So you can actually, move your page through the workflow with your layout builder. Unlike Drupal 7 with panels, where anytime you made a change, it went live automatically, and it kind of really hurt a lot of enterprise workflows with trying to get content moderated and restricted who could use it. So this is a great benefit of Drupal 8. And again, this didn't exist in 7, right? So all of these in-place migrations that go from 7 to 8 are not going to set you up to be able to take advantage of this functionality. You're going to have to rebuild it anyway. So, I really encourage you to do your homework on the best way to build these pages and what's going to work for you and your team and your organization, so that you don't kind of build yourself into a box that you can't get out of again for a couple of years. This is a quick overview of workspaces. So this basically you're allowed to stage content into one of your workspaces. When that workspace is good to go, you can deploy that content. to live. And this can include any number of pages that you have on your website. Just recently, they fixed some of the bugs with it around content moderation and with Layout Builder. So, you need to look at what you're using and if it's supported as you start architecting out your content model for your Drupal 8 website. But if this fits your use case, it can be very powerful for a lot of organizations to control that. And then just want to touch on configuration management again. Again, this suite of modules allows you to enable repeatable deployments across environments so that when I'm pushing my features from development to staging to production, it's a repeatable automated process. And I don't have to go in and spend hours doing manual updates or risk user error with my deployment. And it's a bit easier to use than features once you get the hang of it. So let's talk about some key takeaways from the webinar today. 1, Drupal 7 upgrade is not simple. We encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to improve your website when you do it. It's going to cost you money to do the upgrade. It's probably worth investing the little bit extra it takes to make sure that your look and feel, your brand messaging, your design, and the way that you manage your content is taken into account with your migration. This requires a lot of planning in order to do that. And being proactive instead of reactive will help you not get kind of boxed into a corner that's hard to get out of. Number 2, take advantage of new features. Again, there's a lot of powerful tools that support your business in Drupal 8. Take advantage of them. Your team will appreciate it, and your organization will benefit from it. At the end, I've linked to a couple other presentations I gave recently at DrupalGovCon. One on supercharging your CMS and using data to power it, and one on platforms and multisite. I encourage you to take a look at those as well. They go through some of the other challenges with running these platforms in Drupal 8, and then some pretty cool modules on the contrib space, such as A/B testing and personalization that you can take advantage of in Drupal 8 and 9 for your organization. And then we are here to help. Let us know if you need anything. I hope this webinar was helpful for you. I know we're only about halfway through, and I wanted to leave the last 20 minutes or so for people to ask questions and get feedback. So once we wrap up, I'll unmute everyone, and we can turn this into more of a conversation. If you have specific questions on your site's upgrade, and we can go from there. And again, provided some helpful links here for the Drupal 8 space, as well as the other presentations that I've posted. And we will post both the recording of the webinar as well as the slides after the webinar. So with that, I'm going to open this up for questions. Carlos, just unmuted you if you're there.
Hi, thank you. This is very interesting. My question goes, why should we migrate right away to Drupal 8? And why couldn't we wait for the pain of migrating from 7 to 9? Can it be possible to be done?
Yeah, sure. So Drupal 9 was released in June, and the new way that Drupal 8 and 9 were architected, the upgrade process from 8 to 9 was much smoother than 7 to 8, right? So at this point, over 80% of contrib is already on Drupal 9, and most modules were there on day one, as opposed to Drupal 8, which took months, because they had to redo and rewrite all the code. So you could actually go from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 right now and skip Drupal 8. And 8 and 9, the functionality is exactly the same right now. So anything I said here on Drupal 8 is also applicable in Drupal 9 as well. There are some things you need to take into account if you're going to 9. And the biggest issue we've run into at the enterprise level is with Solar. A lot of the hosting providers, if you're using their built-in Solar offerings, aren't up to date with Solar, and the new versions of Search API and Search API Solar, they're not compatible in Drupal 9 with the old version of the Solar servers. So, you might need to look at moving over to Open Solar or self-hosting your Solar platform if you're using that for search. But otherwise, I don't see any reason why you can't go straight to 9 if the modules that you need are there.
Thanks. The question I think was maybe I would just wait for 2022 to do the migration to 9 straight away.
Yeah, so I mean, you can wait if you want to. Just make sure you plan enough time for your project, right? So going to 9, whether it's in 2021 or 2022, it isn't going to be an issue. Assuming that your current website that's on Drupal 7 meets your needs and doesn't need a refresh before then.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And one other thing to note on that is Drupal 7 won't be really getting much in terms of updates of new functionality. Really, it's going to be keep the lights on security updates. But I think it's been somewhat like that for a little while now, so it shouldn't be too much different.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, of course. I think we had a couple questions on the Q&A section. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. 1 second. All right, so we've got another question here. Are there any modules that work in Drupal 7 that won't work in Drupal 8? The answer is yes. There's a lot of them. There are a lot of modules that never got ported to Drupal 8. And they could have been replaced by a separate module. There could have been 2 competing ones in 7 and only one made it to 8. Or they could have just got migrated into core, or people just lost support for them, right? And that migrate Drupal UI that I mentioned earlier will actually tell you if they exist or not. So you should have a good idea on what's there and what's not when you're doing your prep for your migration. And we've got a second question here. Is there any reason I wouldn't make the upgrade to D9 so I don't have to go through another migration when D8 is deprecated? Again, I think we just talked about that. Answer is no. You can go to 8 or 9 right now, depending on your timeline and your requirements. And again, migrating from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 is just like migrating from 8.5 to 8.6. 8.9 to 9.0 is going to be the same. Another question. Does Digital Polygon offer extended Drupal 7 support after end of life date? The answer is yes, of course we can support, but we are not an official Drupal 7 end of life contributor on Drupal.org. So there is a list of them there, but we can certainly support as well if interested. And I've got one more question here. I'm with a nonprofit and our webmaster is working on tenure and may not be available to us. Where is the best place to find part-time or contractor webmaster to do our 7 to 9 migration? I think we're happy to help out. I'd love to talk to you about your need to upgrade and kind of what that looks like and what you're using your website for. And if we can't help you, if we're not the right fit, we can certainly recommend you to another agency that might be able to support, and point you in the right direction there. Any other questions? Let's see here. Let's see. I think we answered everything. If anyone else has questions, feel free to raise your hand in the panel, and I'll unmute you or put it in the chat. We've got about another 20 minutes here if anyone wants to talk through any issues. Otherwise, again, I really appreciate everyone for jumping on today, and glad we could make it through this and give you guys some time back. Awesome, Diana. I'll reach out to you after the webinar, and I'd love to chat about it. All right, Pushpinder.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for a great session. So my question is that you also spoke about the Drupal UI module. So do we need to install that module in Drupal 7 to see what modules we need to upgrade to Drupal 8, and those are already upgraded to Drupal 8?
Yeah, so the Drupal Migrate UI module is actually in core of Drupal 8. Okay. And what it requires you to do is set up a vanilla Drupal 8 site and run the install on it. And then it has you set up your database credentials to your Drupal 7 site. And that's how it calculates the report for you. So you will have to spin up a new, just empty Drupal 8 site to be able to run that Migrate UI report.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, Hizer.
Hey, John. Just a quick question. I'm just kind of in the information gathering phase. I guess this is going to be a really broad question, but I know that Drupal 7 was extended for a little bit. So does that mean that we have like a year to kind of just sit on our hands, or should we start looking into this still even now, or do we have a little time?
Yeah, of course. So I think it really depends on the organization needs and how complex your website is, right? If you're looking to go through an entire redesign process while you're in a full migration to Drupal 8, Drupal 9, you should really start planning ahead of time. I've seen a lot of enterprises take a year to get through the full process. They usually have complex websites, they have complex content requirements, and they have thousands or tens of thousands of pages. And the migration and the updates that it takes to get that from point A to point B isn't trivial. So I think planning ahead is smart. The last thing that you want is to come up November and be scrambling because you don't have security updates anymore. Because people do target these platforms for hacking. So just like any other platform, it's always important to stay up to date with the latest security updates.
Sure, thanks.
Yep. All right. Anyone else have anything else they want to talk about? I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone in case they want to talk. All right. If not, then I hope everyone has a great rest of their week, and feel free to reach out to us.
I just have one more question. Can I?
Yeah, sure, Carlos.
Sure. I think you mentioned one of the ideas was this is the time to maybe move to another CMS. Is that something you help do too?
Yep. So yeah, of course. We have plenty of clients that move from WordPress to Drupal or Drupal to WordPress, or other CMSs as well. We primarily focus our efforts on open source. So Drupal and WordPress are a big two, but the team has worked on headless applications like React apps and Gatsby. We've done stuff in SharePoint, Percussion, and a lot of the other enterprise CMSs. But I think if you're in Drupal and you have a more simplistic site, WordPress could be a good option for you as an alternative to possibly save you some time and money. But without knowing like the requirements of your website and what you need to do with it, I can't make a good recommendation yet.
All right, thanks. I understand. The other question that is related to, well, maybe not related, but the other angle of this is, I think I heard you saying something about supporting Drupal sites past the end of life date. Is that something that I heard well?
Yep. Yeah, there is community paid support for Drupal 7 past end of life. And we'd certainly be open to helping you if that's something that's needed past 2022.
Nice. Now, but how sustainable is that? How many years one pays somebody to help maintain security patches after the end of life?
Yeah, it's costly, right? And the paid support is not going to be cheap, and it's really a stopgap. If you end up in a point where you haven't planned early enough for your migration, because the underlying framework of Drupal 7 is also getting deprecated. So it's not just the application not getting updated; it's also the PHP frameworks and the contrib modules, and it's a whole breadth of stuff.
So are we talking about five figures a month or something like that?
It really depends how complex your website is.
Yeah.
Ideally not 5 figures a month. But if it's a complex site and it has lots of updates happening to it regularly, it could certainly get up to that.
Sure. So the idea is a stopgap. Make it, if you were lazy or not early ahead. So make it for 6 to a year at most. It sounds.
Yeah. And if you have time to plan ahead, I think you'll get a much better payoff if you invest that money up front.
Yeah.
And it'll also help you in the long run getting better tools for your organization to market with. Because Drupal 7 is much better at that.
Sure, but it's good to pose the question because the bosses are going to ask, why not wait?
Yep, of course.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Any other questions? Anything else I can help anyone out with today?
Hey, John, you know what? I think there's a question in Q&A. It's from Christian. It says, with Drupal 8 being a big fundamental change, how long until the next fundamental change?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the point of the fundamental change with Drupal was to standardize on frameworks so that we could be consistent with community support for the next several years. From Dries's keynotes this year and everything that I've seen on DrupalCon, there's been no talk about getting off of Symfony. So I wouldn't expect it in Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, Drupal 9 to Drupal 10. It's still all planning for Symfony. There are talks about integrating some better theming work to push headless a bit further and connect with some of these other headless applications. But between Drupal 9, Drupal 10, so at least the next 4 years, you won't be seeing this type of issue again. But the caveat to this, right, is every version of Drupal deprecates old functionality as it adds new functionality. And there are automated processes that help you scan for these deprecations. So as long as your team is cleaning up your technical debt as you're building and getting rid of these deprecated functions and using the new ones, the new better ones that are created, then when you come to Drupal 9, you don't have a lot of work to do to upgrade from 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. But if you're not taking care of your website and you're not keeping it up to date, you will still have a lift there. It's just not a migration. It's not as heavy as Drupal 7.8. Does that answer your question, Christian? I hope so.
Yes, it does. Thank you, John.
Okay, of course. All right. Scrolling through here one more time. Give you guys another minute or so. If there's anything else I can help you with. Doesn't sound like it. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone again for coming and sitting through the presentation. I hope it was insightful. I'd love to hear feedback from anyone. Feel free to email us or fill out a contact form. Let us know how we did. If there's anything else that you need or any information you'd like. Happy to jump on a call with anyone and talk through it. So with that. Everyone have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
John.
of course. Goodbye.
Thanks, John.